Hi, this is Dr. Melinda Connor. I'm the Director of Research at Akamai University. I'm also the founder of Earth Song's Holistic Consulting. I'm delighted to be here today. Thank you to the conference organizers and the committee members, the sponsors, for their support in this conference, and the attendees. This is very exciting to have us all get together. The purpose of this particular study was to see if the rates of synesthesia in energy healing practitioner populations are different from the general population. Now, there's method to the madness in this. The individuals involved in this process had expressed in some of our earlier work a different perceptive process, and so we wanted to try and check that out. And synesthesia seemed to be the most straightforward method to do that process. There's some assumptions that are made about consciousness as we're doing research. It's not clear to me all of them are wise, but in general right now, there's the physics assumption that conventional physics is sufficient for explanation, evolutionary assumptions that consciousness has evolved during natural selection. What if we're de-evolving instead of evolving? I'm actually kind of curious about that. Qualia, which is describing, and it's not the same thing as experiencing or generating. It's the overall describing of the process that's involved. So those are kinds of the three areas that people have been looking at with consciousness, and we're starting to look more at the lived experience, but it's a complex question and a complex set of assumptions. The next set of assumptions are that Homo sapiens are conscious. What if we're not? What if we're just waking up? When I was a child, I had an experience with our standard poodle. And I get random mystic experiences. I have all my life. And this particular day, the dog had gotten in a major fight with another dog. And I called him over and I said to him, "Caesar, why are you fighting like this?" And had this mind-boggling experience where I connected consciously through the dog's eyes. And he showed me thousands and thousands of years of history of dogs, and in particular, the history of the poodle fighting side by side with man. And it was completely contiguous. He was completely aware of the entire history of his species. Humans aren't there yet. I think it's kind of an interesting question. We also make an assumption that we can make the determination with the tools that we actually have today, and I don't know that that's necessarily correct. It's certainly better than we were 30 or 35 years ago. We have many more tools than we did then. But it's not clear to me that we've got enough of the tools that we need, and that we're going to ever be able to fully define consciousness, because what if consciousness isn't stable? It's continuously evolving, and our understanding and the use of consciousness, the use of conscious functions is continually expanding and changing. So in this particular process, we were looking at synesthesia as an explanation, a potential explanation for the sensory phenomenon that practitioners were describing to us. In 2002, Seidowik described it as joined senses, and it is often described as a sensory phenomenon that doesn't appear to involve high-level memory association. That is in fact in contrast with the data that we've gotten and the discussions, the anecdotal discussions that we've had with practitioners. This type of synesthesia that we're finding in the energy practitioners is not the same. It is not the standard, the letter A is always green, or seeing a numerical equation with a plus sign, one always hears a particular sound, or you get a particular smell and you get a taste that's in contrast with it. So we're not getting double function of a particular neural pathway. What we're getting is an integrated function, and whether it should be called synesthesia or just integrated sensing, I don't know yet. What causes synesthesia? Extra connections, rewiring, white matter differences. There can be increased activation in various sections of the brain. But at a certain level, it's neuroplasticity because we've got remapping happening as double function. We don't know yet whether it's genetic or there's some sort of mutation after birth going on, things like that. But it is a complex sensing process. So why are we interested in synesthesia? Well, there's thousands of years of anecdotal reports of multisensory experiences. And many programs today, mindfulness, for example, includes training in multisensory perception. When you have multisensory perception, situational and environmental awareness is increased. There are flashes of inspiration that are involved. And by multisensory perception, I mean something very specific. I mean that the person who is able to taste the sound of the smell of the wall in front of them as a unified experience, which is different from the sound of the smell of the taste of the wall. The ordering of the senses is different, and in the difference of the ordering of the senses, there are different nuanced perceptions which allow a more encompassing experience of the senses. I think the most similar term would be Robert Heinlein's grokking. You grok the full sensory experience on multiple levels of a particular environmental and situational stimuli. So there are some interesting implications for consciousness. It allows us to look at differences in neurocomplexity, and it looks at the individual differences of experience of environmental stimuli. It also creates a more immediate awareness of the impact of actions in daily life. Think of, for example, a tsunami coming to the shore, and the animals all go to higher ground, and the humans are utterly unaware of what's going on. That awareness and capacity to go to higher ground is a level of environmental stimuli experience and complexity that we don't understand yet. And it is possible it's a step in the development of potentially a unified human consciousness, the ability, just like the standard poodle that I connected with. And perhaps that was a boggle factor experience, single one-off, unclear at this time. We selected the Telogen Absorption Scale. It's largely to look at hypnagogic reactions, how hypnotizable is someone. But it also allows, because of the subscales, to look specifically at mixed sensing. The absorption scale's been around for years and years and years. It was actually originally developed back in 1974. And we were using a version that was actually developed in 1995. So, but there are subsequent versions that are out there. I like the one that we used, so we used it. It's a questionnaire, an instrument that looks at individual perception of experience. And it has a well-tested, reliable synesthesia scale. So we're looking at 7 items. One of the interesting things about this was that smell, which is one of the oldest senses, actually was the lowest responder in this process. And so it brings up another question, which is smell being overlaid over time as it's less valuable to us in some way? So we'll see. The combination of odors and colors specifically had the least response. Memories, however, were called up by scent and smells very effectively. It was one of the highest responses. So a range of responses from 31% up through 86% on these questions. So we took data from 3 studies, consented people and received approvals. And so we tested a little bit over 100 folks, 124 folks in this process. And we did a comparison. We looked at synesthesia experiences in non-healers. We found a range of responses in the literature. 1 in 200 in 2001, 1 in 2000 in 1996. Unclear whether or not that trend is showing a potential increase in the process, whether that's an emerging sensitivity. Energy healers reported synesthesia type experiences at a rate of 1 in 3 in this study, so much, much higher than the reported general population if we're considering this integrated form synesthesia. It's a non-harmful, non-neurotypical pattern where it just provides more information. But it's not a static version of perception. It's actually specifically nuanced to the individual. And one of the most fascinating things, as we've been doing some subsequent studies, is the difficulty the practitioner has in putting the nuances into words. And oftentimes they're expressing the differences in perception as something more brown or something more green or something more pungent or something brighter. So it's been very interesting to find the limitations of our actual language in this process. And as I mentioned before, this is a fully integrated multisensory process. So what's the relevance to consciousness research? You can map brain linkages more completely because of the complexity of the neural response. You'll see more of it light up. There are possible linkages between the biochemical pointers in the brain to where memory is located and the waters of the body that are linked to musculature, which are actually the film media. And let me qualify that. Many, many, many energy healing practitioners will say be working on a calf or a foot or a knee. And as they're running energy, a video type experience will happen for them, and they will see the actual vent of the trauma, which is stored in the tissue. So with the number of consistent responses, which I have received to this point, and my also personal experiences of the process. I actually think that the memories are stored in the waters of the body as if the water is film media. An interesting side to that process is that when you view the process, you view it as if there is a camera outside the body viewing the situation. So it's not taken from the individual's point of perceptive view. So trivia for what it's worth, something more to explore. In addition, one thinks about the world differently when you can experience the world more completely and greater accuracy. There's an environmental awareness increase, potentially early warning systems in situations like tsunami and major storms, potentially increased brain usage and maintenance of neural complexity instead of the neurological pruning that we see as we age. There may be an improvement in brain coherence and long-term brain functions as we look in this population. And trivia for what it's worth, integrated sensing is the first step to teleportation. It's an integrated environmental awareness, and then you lift the core up, connect to every cell in the body so you can do unified movement, and you slide on to the feet and up the body, the new environment that you have fully perceived, and you slide off the environment that you're in. And that process, and if physicists could get access to a number of individuals that have the ability to teleport, they should be able to research superimposition in humans. And I think it would be kind of an interesting process. Of course, the challenge is always getting the research subject. The paper on this material, this first in the set of studies that we're doing, is published. It was published in 2021 during the pandemic. It is out in the Journal of Medical and Clinical Studies, and I'm happy to send you a link to the journal article itself. Feel free to contact me with any questions, Melinda_Connor at mindspring.com. If I don't get back to you within 48 hours, don't be shy, email me again. Grateful acknowledgement of support was provided by the BSW Foundation, the Karen Connor Optimal Healing Research Fund, the Reconnection, and at the time I did some of these studies, I was funded by the National Institutes of Health as a T32 postdoctoral fellow. Thank you.